Tonight, I will tell you 3 terrifying true through the places they began.
Story 1. The Woman from the Hollow Creek. I never believed in black magic until the winter of 2018, when I moved to a small cabin near Hollow Creek, Kentucky. I had just gotten divorced and wanted a quiet place to heal, far away from everything. The cabin was cheap, too cheap actually, but the owner, an older man named Earl, told me it used to belong to a woman who didn't like visitors. I laughed it off. I thought it was just local superstition. The first few nights were quiet, except for the wind against the trees. Then strange things started happening. One morning I woke to find a dead crow on my porch, its wings spread wide and what looked like ashes sprinkled in a circle around it. I figured it was some prank by local kids. I threw it away and didn't think much of it. But the next night, around 2 a.m., I heard something outside, a slow dragging sound, like someone walking barefoot through gravel. When I peeked through the window, I saw a woman standing by the tree line. Her back was turned to me, but I could see she was wearing a long black dress that looked like it was soaked from the knees down. She didn't move, didn't even flinch when I turned on the porch light. Then she was gone. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading from the creek straight to my porch. They stopped right in front of my door. That was when I called Earl. He didn't seem surprised. He told me the woman who lived there before me, Martha Dean, had been a root worker, which I later learned meant a practitioner of old Appalachian witchcraft. According to him, she had helped sick people, blessed crops, that kind of thing. But after her son died in a mining accident, something changed. She started doing dark things, trying to bring him back. The townsfolk stopped talking to her, and one day she vanished. No one ever saw her again. That night, I heard whispering outside the cabin, low, raspy, like someone chanting. I couldn't understand the words, but it made my skin crawl. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the window. There, by the creek, was a flickering candle and what looked like bones arranged in a circle, and standing beside them was the same woman in black, this time facing me. I'll never forget her face, eyes white as milk, skin stretched thin and gray. She raised her hand and pointed directly at me. The candle went out and the whispering stopped. I slammed the door, locked everything, and sat there all night holding a kitchen knife. The following day, I packed up to leave, but before I left, curiosity got the better of me. I went down to the creek. The ground was soft and smelled like rot. The circle of bones was still there, only now they were buried halfway in the mud, like the earth was reclaiming them. I found something else too, a small wooden figure, carved roughly into the shape of a child. Its eyes were 2 small stones, and its mouth was stitched shut with twine. I threw it back into the water and drove straight to town. When I got to Earl's, he looked pale as a ghost. You should have never gone near that creek. That's where they found her. I asked him what he meant. Earl told me that Martha, after she disappeared, hunters found her body, half buried by the creek, face down in the mud. The sheriff ruled it natural causes, but everyone in town said she cursed anyone who disturbed her rituals. I didn't sleep for 3 days after that. When I finally returned home to pack the rest of my stuff, the cabin smelled like burnt sage and something else, decay. On the kitchen table lay that same wooden figure, wet and muddy, placed neatly in the center. I don't remember much after that, just that I left everything behind and never went back. It's been years since then, but I still dream of her sometimes. I see her standing in the water, holding that wooden doll, her lips moving silently. And every time I wake up, my house feels colder, like something followed me. I don't tell people this story anymore because they always ask the same thing, if I really believe in black magic. The truth is, I don't know what I believe, but I do know that something still lives by Hollow Creek, and some nights, when the wind hits just right, I can still hear that whispering, low, rhythmic, and calling my name.
Story 2: The Mirror Ritual. In 2015, I rented a small apartment in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I was 25, fresh out of college, and broke as hell. The place was old, creaky floors, water-stained walls, and an antique mirror that came with the unit. It hung in the hallway, tall and narrow, with a heavy bronze frame that looked centuries old. The landlord told me it was original to the house, which I didn't think much about. But if I'd known what that mirror carried, I would have smashed it to pieces on day one. My downstairs neighbor, an older woman named Lorraine, was the one who first mentioned the mirror's trick. She said locals called it the wishing glass. "It gives you what you ask for," she whispered one night while smoking outside, "but only if you feed it." I laughed, thinking she was half drunk. But later that week, after losing my part-time job, I remembered her words. Out of desperation, I looked up mirror rituals online. To my surprise, I found old Cajun folklore about mirrors being doorways used in voodoo and hoodoo practices. One ritual, almost identical to what Lorraine mentioned, required blood, a candle, and a spoken request. It sounded ridiculous, but I was desperate. That night, I lit a white candle in front of the mirror and pricked my finger with a sewing needle. I smeared a small drop of blood on the glass and said out loud, "I need help. I need a way to survive." The candle flickered once, then went out. I thought maybe I'd made a draft, but the next day, a stranger at a local bar offered me a freelance gig, helping catalog old antiques for a collector. The pay was double what I'd made before. I took it as luck and forgot about the mirror. A few nights later, I awoke to faint tapping sounds. When I turned on the light, the noise stopped. I followed it to the hallway, the mirror. The tapping came from inside the glass, like someone knocking gently from the other side. I stepped closer and noticed something off. My reflection was smiling, but I wasn't. My heart dropped. I backed away, turned on every light, and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I tried to cover the mirror with a bedsheet, but it wouldn't stay. No matter how tightly I tucked it, by evening the sheet would fall off. I asked Lorraine about it again. She looked terrified. "You fed it, didn't you?" she said. I didn't answer, but she must have seen it on my face. Once it takes your blood, it remembers you. You can't undo it. She told me the mirror used to belong to a woman named Celeste Moreau, a practitioner of black magic from the early 1900s. Celeste was rumored to trap souls in mirrors as offerings to the other side. When she died, her house was gutted, but the mirror was never found. Lorraine swore this was it. That night, I tried to ignore the sounds, but sleep wouldn't come. Around 3 a.m., I saw movement from the hallway. My reflection was standing there again, faintly glowing in the dark, smiling that same unnatural smile. Then I saw another face appear behind it, an old woman with hollow eyes and black lips. She whispered something, and the glass rippled like water. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and waited until sunrise. The next morning, I packed my things and decided to move. But before I could leave, I went to take one last look. Some part of me wanted to prove it wasn't real. The mirror looked normal in daylight, so I leaned in close. That's when I saw a fingerprint, mine, smeared in blood, exactly where I'd touched it the first night. Only now, beneath it, faint letters had appeared, written backward from the inside. "Stay with me." I called the landlord, told him the mirror needed to go. He got defensive, said it was part of the lease and couldn't be removed. I told him he could keep my deposit and left that same night. I drove to my cousin's place across town and tried to forget. But 2 days later, the landlord called me. His voice was shaking. "What the hell did you do in that apartment?" he asked. I told him nothing and asked why. He said the new tenant refused to move in. She claimed the mirror was breathing. I didn't sleep for weeks after that. I kept catching my reflection moving slightly out of sync whenever I passed a mirror or window. Sometimes it blinked a second too late. I even tried breaking a small hand mirror once, just to test it, and the moment it shattered, I heard a whisper behind me, the same voice from that night. "You shouldn't have left." It's been nearly 10 years now. I've changed states, jobs, everything. But still, once in a while, when the lights are dim and I catch my reflection unexpectedly, I swear I see her, the old woman, faintly smiling from somewhere deep in the glass. I never look long enough to confirm. Some people say black magic dies with the one who cast it, but that's not true. Sometimes it lives inside the things they leave behind and waits for someone desperate enough to feed it again.
Story 3. The Spellbook from Willow Road. Back in 2020, I was working as a part-time cleaner in a small town outside Salem, Massachusetts. The pay wasn't much, but it covered rent, and I liked the quiet life. One of my regular clients was an old Victorian house on Willow Road, owned by a reclusive man named Dr. Hargrove. He was polite but odd, always wearing gloves, never letting me into his study. He said it was where he kept his research.
The first few weeks went fine, but around my 5th visit, I noticed something strange. No matter how clean I left the place, there was always a faint smell of burnt herbs, like sage mixed with something metallic. One afternoon, Hargrove got a call and rushed out mid-conversation, leaving his study door unlocked. I shouldn't have gone in, but curiosity got the better of me. The room was lined with shelves filled with books, thick, leather-bound, and covered in dust. One sat open on the desk, written in strange symbols that looked hand-drawn. At the top of the page, in English, it read, "Binding the Shadow." The text described a ritual to trap restless spirits for obedience and silence. I remember laughing to myself. Salem, witch town, of course. But when I flipped the page, a loose photo fell out. It showed 3 people standing in a circle made of chalk, candles all around them. One of them looked like Hargrove. That night, I couldn't shake what I'd seen. Something about that photo felt wrong. The faces of the other 2 people were blurred, not by motion, but as if the film itself had melted in those spots. I kept dreaming about that chalk circle and a voice saying, "You opened it." When I returned to work the next morning, Hargrove was different. He didn't greet me. He just stared for a long time before saying, "You touched something you shouldn't have." My stomach dropped. I hadn't told him I'd gone into the study. He must have seen it in my face. "If you took anything," he said quietly, "put it back before it follows you." I told him I didn't take anything and left early. But that night, strange things started happening. My apartment lights flickered. Shadows moved across walls when I was alone, and I kept smelling that same burnt herb scent. Around 3 a.m., I woke up gasping for air. Someone was whispering my name right beside my ear. I turned on the lamp, no one there. But on my nightstand sat that same photo from the study. I hadn't taken it. My blood ran cold. The next morning, I went straight to the Willow Road house. The front door was open. Inside, it was quiet, but something felt heavy, like the air itself was vibrating. I found Hargrove in his study, standing in front of the desk, mumbling to himself. The open book was on the floor, pages fluttering though there was no wind. When he noticed me, he looked terrified, not angry. "It's loose now," he said. "It's attached to you." He told me that years ago, he and 2 others had tried to summon and bind a shadow spirit as part of a black magic ritual meant to reveal hidden knowledge. But something went wrong. The spirit didn't bind, it fed. The 2 others disappeared within weeks. Only Hargrove survived by sealing what was left of the entity into that book. He'd been guarding it ever since. He said when I entered the room and touched the book, I had broken the seal. Now the spirit had a new connection, me. I wanted to leave, but he grabbed my arm. He said, "It'll come for you at night, in mirrors, in shadows, in silence. If it whispers your name, don't answer." That night, I didn't sleep. Every light in my apartment stayed on. Around 2:45 a.m., the bulbs began flickering one by one, until only the lamp beside my bed remained. I stared at the wall and saw a dark shape slowly forming in the corner, tall, thin, its edges shifting like smoke. It whispered my name again, and the sound came from inside my head. My whole body went cold. I grabbed my phone to call someone, but the screen was dead, just static. I covered my ears and started saying Hargrove's name over and over, anything to drown it out.
Then everything went silent. The next morning, I drove back to the house. Police tape surrounded it. A neighbor told me Hargrove had been found dead in his study, burned from the inside out. They ruled it as electrical failure, but I knew better. I told the cops I barely knew him and left. That night, I packed up everything and moved 3 towns over. For a while, the strange things stopped. No whispers, no smells, nothing. But last month, I came home from work and found something on my kitchen counter, a burnt scrap of paper with part of a sentence on it. Binding the shadow. I don't know how it got there. I don't even own that book. Sometimes when I turn off the lights, I see something tall standing just beyond the reflection in my window, waiting. I've moved twice since then, but it always finds me eventually.
Remember what you've heard tonight, because the shadows are listening, and they never forget.